At Sunday dinner, my sister Audrey rolled her eyes and said, "It's cute, you still show up like you matter." She passed the mashed potatoes without looking at me. My dad chuckled, eyes fixed on his plate. Mom just kept eating her fork, scraping against china. My brother Tyler scrolled through his phone, pretending not to hear. I took a bite and said nothing, but something broke inside me. After years of paying their bills, buying the vacation home when Dad's business failed, covering their streaming services and trying to belong, I finally understood the truth. I was their bank, not their family. I've always been the odd one out in my family. Growing up, I was the middle child no one quite understood. When I turned 32 last month, I'd been supporting my family financially for nearly a decade, ever since I walked away from medical school to start my real estate development company. That choice made me the family disappointment, despite my success. The Sunday dinner incident didn't come from nowhere. 3 days earlier, Audrey had called asking for $75,000 to invest in her struggling medical practice. "It's just a temporary cash flow issue," she explained, her voice carrying that familiar tone, the one that implied I owed this to her. "Insurance reimbursements are down and I've had to upgrade some equipment. You know how it is." I didn't know, actually. My business succeeded precisely because I tracked every dollar and made careful investments. "I need to look at my finances," I told her. "That's a significant amount." The silence on the phone carried her disapproval. "Right. I forgot you need to count your pennies despite all your big talk about success." "It's not about counting pennies, Audrey. It's about making responsible decisions. I'd want to understand how the practice is doing. See the books, know the repayment plan. This isn't a bank loan, Esther. This is family." Her voice had that edge, the one she'd perfected since childhood. "You know what? Forget it. I'll figure it out myself. Some of us don't measure family support with spreadsheets." She hung up. I sat in my office staring at the skyline through my window, wondering why every interaction with my family left me feeling hollow. I still went to Sunday dinner, though. I always did. Our family dinners had started as a tradition after Dad's construction company went under 6 years ago. He'd overextended, taken risks he shouldn't have, and the recession did the rest. Mom called me crying about possibly losing their house. I stepped in, restructured their debt, and bought the lake house they'd been making payments on for years but couldn't afford to keep. I put it in my name but told them to use it as they always had. "It's still our family vacation home," I'd said. "I'm just handling the paperwork." They'd thanked me then, but gratitude has a short half-life in my family. The lake house was just the beginning. Over the years, I'd paid for Tyler's car when he wrecked his previous one. I covered the family phone plan, all streaming services, and vacation expenses. When Audrey's son started private school, I contributed to tuition. When Mom wanted to remodel the kitchen, I wrote the check. I never kept track of the total amount that felt too transactional for family. Tyler lived in one of my investment properties rent-free. "Just until I get established," he'd said 2 years ago. He worked sporadically as a fitness trainer, always with big plans that never materialized. Meanwhile, Audrey became a dermatologist with a practice in an upscale neighborhood. On paper, she was the success story. The daughter who followed the proper path, married well, had the perfect child. The fact that she needed my money was our unspoken secret. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' home carrying an apple pie from their favorite bakery. Mom accepted it with a quick thank you before hurrying back to the kitchen. Dad watched football in the living room, barely acknowledging my arrival. Tyler showed up 20 minutes late, immediately raiding the refrigerator. Audrey and her husband arrived last, their son Parker running in to show Grandpa his latest video game. Dinner began normally. Mom served pot roast, my favorite, though I doubted that was intentional. Dad complained about property taxes. Tyler mentioned a potential client who might sign up for long-term training. Audrey dominated the conversation with stories about the medical conference she'd attended in San Diego, emphasizing the exclusive attendance. Only the top specialists were invited, she mentioned for the 3rd time, glancing at me. The conversation shifted when Mom asked about my work. "The downtown development is moving forward," I said. "We secured the permits last week." "That's the office building?" Mom asked vaguely. "Mixed use." Retail on the ground floor, offices above, and residential on the top floors. It's the biggest project I've handled so far. Dad said, refilling his wine glass. Sounds risky in this economy. I've run the projections from multiple angles. The financing is solid, I replied, though no one had asked. Audrey picked at her salad. Must be nice playing with buildings while some of us are saving lives. The table went quiet. I set down my fork. I'm not playing Audrey. I'm running a business that employs 38 people. You know what I mean. She waved dismissively. Different priorities. Tyler jumped in. Speaking of priorities, Esther, could you help me upgrade my training equipment? I could really expand my client base with better gear. Before I could answer, Audrey made the comment that would change everything. It's cute you still show up like you matter, she said, passing the mashed potatoes. We all know you're just waiting for someone to praise your business success or ask for money. Dad chuckled. Mom kept eating. Tyler looked down at his phone. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I'd refused to acknowledge for years. Despite all I'd given, I remained the outsider tolerated for my checkbook, not valued as a daughter or sister. I took a bite and said nothing. But inside, something shifted permanently. I wouldn't be their ATM anymore. Monday morning, I called Susan, my attorney, before even starting my workday. I need to untangle some financial commitments, I told her when she picked up. Susan had handled both my business and personal legal matters for years. She knew about my family dynamics. She'd questioned some of my financial decisions regarding them in the past. Family related, she asked. Yes. I need a complete accounting of what I've spent on them and what legal obligations I actually have. 3 hours later, I sat in her office staring at a spreadsheet that made my stomach turn. Over $600,000 over 5 years, not counting the lake house. This is conservative, Susan said, adjusting her glasses. We don't have records of cash gifts, meals, or smaller expenses. The lake house alone was worth $1.2 million in the current market. I'd put it in my name for tax and liability purposes. But I'd always thought of it as the family's property in all but legal documents. What am I legally obligated to continue? I asked. Nothing, Susan said bluntly. The lake house is yours. The rental property where Tyler lives is yours. He has no lease, making him effectively a month-to-month tenant. The family phone plan, streaming services, subscriptions, all voluntary expenses you can cancel anytime. She leaned forward. Esther, as your lawyer and friend, I've watched you try to buy your family's approval for years. Has it worked? I looked away. I thought I was helping. There's a difference between helping and enabling. You're enabling dependent relationships that benefit everyone but you. I left Susan's office with a plan. First, I called Mark, a developer colleague who'd expressed interest in lakefront properties. The Anderson Lake property. You're finally selling. His surprise was evident. I thought that was your family's sacred place. Things change, I said. Are you still interested? Absolutely. I'll pay market value, no discount fishing. When can I see it? I'll send you the key code. The place is empty midweek. Next, I systematically canceled every account. Netflix, Hulu, Disney, plus HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Spotify, Apple TV, plus the premium cable package I paid for at my parents' house, the meal delivery services, the subscription boxes, the family phone plan. With each cancellation, I felt lighter. I drafted a formal notice to Tyler about the property, giving him the legal 60 days required. I didn't plan to charge him immediately, but he needed to understand our arrangement was changing. Throughout that day and the next, the messages rolled in. Mom called about a kitchen appliance delivery I'd arranged months ago. The store says the payment method was declined. I'll look into it, I said non-committally. Dad texted about his golf club membership renewal. I didn't respond. Audrey sent an email about Parker's school payment. The tuition office called. Did you forget to send the quarterly contribution? I replied simply, I'm making some financial adjustments. I can't continue the tuition payments. Her response came within minutes. We're counting on that money, Esther. You promised. I hadn't promised. I'd offered to help when she mentioned struggling with the payments 2 years ago. Somehow my offer had transformed into an obligation in her mind. Tyler was surprisingly quiet, probably because he hadn't yet noticed any changes affecting him directly. The streaming services were in my name, but he used them at his apartment. He wouldn't notice until he tried watching something. By Wednesday, I'd set most of my plan in motion. Mark visited the lake house and made a formal offer slightly above market value. I accepted immediately and instructed Susan to expedite the paperwork. That evening, my phone began buzzing constantly. The first text came from Tyler. "Why is everything disconnected?" Before I could respond, the family group chat exploded. "Tyler, Netflix, Hulu. Everything's down. Payment problem, Dad cable company called about the bill. Fix it, Esther. Audrey. What's going on, Mom? Dear. Is everything okay with your accounts?" I turned my phone to silent and poured myself a glass of wine. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my relationship with my family. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Then my phone displayed an incoming call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man's voice responded. "Miss Walker. This is Richard Brennan, your father's attorney. We need to talk about the lake house property." "I'm not sure what there is to discuss," I told Richard Brennan, my voice calmer than I felt. "The lake house is legally mine. According to my client, there was an understanding that the property would remain in the family's use permanently, regardless of legal ownership. That understanding didn't include me being disrespected and taken for granted," I replied. "But this is really a family matter, not a legal one. Miss Walker, my client is prepared to explore all options if necessary." "Is that a threat, Mr. Brennan?" "A statement of fact. Your father believes. My father can call me directly if he has concerns." "Goodbye, Mr. Brennan." I hung up, hands shaking. Within minutes, my phone rang again. "Dad," this time. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom. Then Audrey. Tyler sent a series of increasingly panicked texts about his streaming services. Finally, I texted the family group, "I'm reevaluating my financial commitments. I'm happy to discuss this as a family, but not tonight." I turned off my phone and called my friend Tara from my landline. "They're freaking out," I told her, after explaining the situation. "Good," she said firmly. "It's about time they realized what you've done for them." Tara had witnessed my family dynamic for years, always encouraging me to set boundaries. I'd never listened. "Am I being petty?" I asked. "Petty would be canceling their services without warning because of one comment. This isn't about Sunday dinner, Esther. It's about years of them treating you like nothing more than a checkbook." I slept poorly that night, but woke with renewed determination. I turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I was about to head to the office when my doorbell rang. Dad stood in the hallway, his face a storm cloud. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me into my apartment. "Good morning to you too, Dad." He paced my living room, agitation in every movement. "What's this about selling the lake house?" "I received a good offer. That's our family home. It's my property. I've maintained it, paid the taxes, covered the repairs." "You bought it for the family." "I bought it because you couldn't afford the payments anymore," I corrected. "I've let everyone use it freely, and now you're selling it out from under us because your sister hurt your feelings." His voice rose. "This is childish, Esther. The old me would have backpedaled, apologized, tried to smooth things over. Instead, I remained calm. This isn't about hurt feelings. It's about recognizing an unhealthy pattern. I've supported this family financially for years, while being treated as an outsider." "Nobody asked you to pay for everything," he shouted. "Mom called me crying about losing the house. Tyler needed rent-free housing. Audrey needed help with Parker's tuition. You needed the country club membership. Nobody asked directly, Dad. You all just expected. So you're punishing everyone because you feel unappreciated." "I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference." Dad's face reddened. "We're family. Family helps each other. Help should go both ways." "When's the last time anyone helped me, Dad? When's the last time anyone even asked about my life beyond what money I could provide?" He faltered momentarily. "You've never needed help. You've been successful." Success doesn't mean I don't need my family, I said quietly. But I've never felt like I had that. Dad's expression hardened again. If you sell that lake house, you'll destroy this family. If a vacation property is what's holding our family together, we have bigger problems than I thought. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Your mother is devastated. Audrey says you're backing out of Parker's tuition commitment. Tyler says you're evicting him. I gave Tyler legal notice. He has 60 days, which is more than generous. As for Parker's tuition, I never committed to paying it indefinitely. You've changed, Dad said accusingly. I've woken up. After he left, I called Susan to warn her about potential legal challenges from my father. He has no case, she assured me. But family disputes can get messy. Are you prepared for that? I don't think I have a choice anymore. That afternoon, I received a text from Tyler that surprised me. Can we talk just us? We met at a coffee shop near his apartment, my apartment technically. He looked disheveled, eyes bloodshot. Are you really kicking me out? He asked immediately. I'm asking you to start paying rent, or find another place. That's not the same as kicking you out. I can't afford market rent, Esther. You know that. You could if you worked full-time. He stared into his coffee. It's not that simple. It is, Tyler. You're 28 with no responsibilities beyond yourself. What's holding you back? His shoulders slumped. I'm not like you and Audrey. I don't have the drive or the brains. That's not true. You've just never had to try because someone always bailed you out. Usually me. He looked up, eyes flashing. So you're cutting me off to teach me a lesson. I'm stepping back so you can step up. There's a difference. And the lake house? What's that about? It's about making a business decision. The property has appreciated significantly. It makes sense to sell. But what about our summers there? The family traditions, I sighed. Tyler, when was the last time you thanked me for providing that house? When was the last time anyone acknowledged that I'm the reason we still had family traditions at all? He had no answer. As I left the coffee shop, my phone rang. It was Mom, her voice tight with strain. Esther, you need to come over. Your father is talking about suing you. For what, Mom? The lake house is legally mine. He says there was an oral agreement. Please just come talk to him. I agreed, but with conditions. We meet at Susan's office with her present. This needs to be civilized. You're bringing a lawyer to a family discussion. Her voice broke. What's happened to you? I learned to protect myself. Even from family. Later that night, Audrey called the first direct contact since Sunday dinner. Her voice was cold. I hope you're satisfied. You've thrown the entire family into chaos. That wasn't my intention. Then, what was your intention, Esther? To punish me for one comment. This isn't about your comment. It was just the final straw. So dramatic, she scoffed. Always the victim. Funny, I've never played the victim. I've just paid the bills. And now you're using that to control everyone. I laughed without humor. That's rich coming from you, Audrey. How's the practice really doing? Is it just cash flow issues? Or is there more you're not telling the family? Her sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit a nerve. You know nothing about my practice. I know enough. I've been subsidizing your perfect life for years, while you pretend I'm the failure who took the easy path. I never said. You didn't have to say it. It was in every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every must-be-nice remark. Silence stretched between us. Parker's school called me directly, I continued. They've noticed a pattern of late payments before my contributions began. The administrator mentioned financial concerns. What's really going on, Audrey? That's none of your business. It became my business when you asked for $75,000. Forget I asked, she snapped. We don't need your charity. After she hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment wondering if I'd gone too far. Then I remembered Sunday dinner. The laughter at my expense, the casual cruelty, the years of subtle and not so subtle reminders that I didn't quite belong. No, I hadn't gone too far. I hadn't gone far enough. The meeting at Susan's office was set for Friday morning. I arrived early, reviewing documents with Susan while waiting for my family. They have no legal claim to the lake house, Susan reiterated. But be prepared for emotional appeals. I'm done responding to guilt trips, I said, though my stomach churned with anxiety. My parents arrived first. Mom looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes. Dad wore his business face, the expression he used when trying to intimidate contractors. Tyler came next, slipping into a chair without meeting anyone's eyes. Audrey arrived last, making an entrance in her white doctor's coat as if she'd squeezed us in between important medical obligations. Richard Brennan, Dad's lawyer, began by outlining what he called the family's understanding regarding the lake house. When Miss Walker purchased the property 6 years ago, she explicitly stated it would remain a family vacation home. The Walkers have maintained the property, made improvements, and treated it as their own with Miss Walker's full knowledge and encouragement, Susan countered smoothly. There was no written agreement to that effect, and my client has paid all taxes, insurance, and major maintenance costs. The improvements you mention were cosmetic and voluntary. There was a verbal agreement, Dad interjected. There was a verbal assurance that you could continue using the property, I corrected. Not that I would never sell it. Why now? Mom asked, her voice small. Why are you doing this to us? I'm not doing anything to you. I'm making financial decisions about my property. Because Audrey hurt your feelings, Dad said dismissively. Before I could respond, Susan intervened. This meeting will be more productive if we focus on facts rather than motives. My client owns the property and has decided to sell it. She's not legally obligated to maintain family access indefinitely. What about moral obligations? Audrey challenged. Family means nothing to you, Esther. Something snapped inside me. Let's talk about family obligations, shall we? In the past 5 years, I've spent over $600,000 supporting this family. I've paid for vacations, cars, tuition, streaming services, phone plans, country club memberships, kitchen remodels. The list goes on. I pulled out the spreadsheet Susan had prepared and slid it across the table. Here's a partial accounting. And what have I received in return? Contempt. Dismissal. Jokes at my expense. Being told it's cute that I show up to family dinner like I matter. Silence fell across the room. No one asked you to pay for everything, Dad finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. Really, I turned to him. You didn't ask me to buy the lake house when your business failed. Mom didn't call crying about losing your home. Tyler didn't need a place to live. Audrey didn't need help with Parker's private school. That was different, Mom protested. Those were emergencies. Which became expectations, I countered. Every time I helped, it became the new normal. No gratitude, just entitlement. Tyler stared at the spreadsheet, visibly uncomfortable. Audrey's face had paled. Dad looked angry but said nothing. Susan steered the conversation back to legalities, but the mood had shifted. The family's righteous indignation had been punctured by the cold reality of numbers. As the meeting concluded, Richard advised my father in hushed tones. Dad nodded grimly before addressing me. We'll be reviewing our legal options, he said stiffly. You'll be wasting your money, Susan replied. Outside the office, Mom tried to speak with me privately, but Audrey intercepted, pulling me aside with surprising force. You had no right to investigate my practice, she hissed. I didn't investigate anything. The school administrator called me directly about the tuition payment. You had no right to tell everyone about my financial issues. I didn't share anything that wasn't already evident from your request for $75,000. Her eyes narrowed. You've always been jealous of me. This is your revenge. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Jealous? I've been supporting your lifestyle for years while you pretended to be more successful than you are. My practice is going through a temporary rough patch, she insisted. It's normal in medicine these days. Then get a business loan like everyone else. Or is there a reason banks won't lend to you? Her expression confirmed my suspicion. The medical board is investigating some billing irregularities. It's a misunderstanding. Is that why you needed cash quickly? Off the books? She glanced around nervously. Keep your voice down. It's not what you think. I don't know what to think, Audrey, because you've never been honest with me. As we spoke, I noticed Tyler in deep conversation with Susan, occasionally glancing my way. Dad stood by the elevator, rigid with anger. Mom hovered between groups, clearly unsure where to place herself. After everyone left, Susan shared a surprising development. Tyler asked me about subletting laws. Apparently, he's been renting out the spare bedrooms in your property. What, without telling me? She nodded. He seemed worried about potential legal consequences. I told him he'd need to speak with you directly. I drove home in a daze. The family's reaction wasn't surprising, but Tyler's subletting revelation was. How many other secrets were they keeping while positioning me as the family villain? That evening, my phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app. Someone had attempted to access the joint emergency account I'd established with Audrey years ago for family crises. I'd forgotten to close it during my financial disentanglement. The access attempt had been denied. I'd frozen the account earlier that week. But the attempt itself, coming hours after our meeting, said everything about Audrey's priorities. I immediately called the bank and began the process of removing her from the account entirely. While on hold with the customer service representative, I received a text from Tyler. We need to talk about the apartment situation. There's something you should know. Before I could respond, another notification appeared. This one from the realtor handling the lake house sale. The buyers wanted to expedite closing. They were offering an additional $50,000 to complete within 2 weeks. I accepted immediately. There was no reason to drag this out any longer. A week passed with minimal contact from my family. Dad was apparently consulting with multiple attorneys, though Susan assured me none had a case. Mom left tearful voicemails that I couldn't bring myself to return. Audrey maintained radio silence. Only Tyler reached out, consistently requesting a meeting I'd been avoiding. Finally, I agreed to see him at my office after hours. He arrived looking unexpectedly professional in a button-down shirt and slacks a manila envelope under his arm. Thanks for seeing me, he said, taking a seat across from my desk. You said it was important. He nodded, opening the envelope and spreading several documents before me. I need to come clean about something. The papers were rental agreements. 6 of them for the 3 bedrooms in the property I'd allowed him to live in rent-free. I've been subletting the rooms for the past 18 months, he admitted, charging $1,500 per room, sometimes more, for short-term rentals. I stared at him, processing this information. You've been making $4,500 monthly from my property, while claiming you couldn't afford rent. He had the grace to look ashamed. Yes. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's wrong and I don't want to be that person anymore. He pulled out another document, a bank statement, showing an account with nearly $60,000. This is what I've saved from the rental income. I want to give it to you. I pushed the statement back toward him. Keep it. Use it to find your own place and start fresh. I don't deserve your generosity. This isn't generosity, Tyler. It's me refusing to take money that represents who you've been. I'd rather you use it to become someone better. He nodded slowly. There's more you should know. About Dad. What about him? His business didn't fail just because of the recession. He made some bad bets, gambling debts. That's where a lot of the company's cash went. This revelation shouldn't have shocked me, but it did. How do you know this? I overheard him arguing with Mom years ago. Later, I found some loan paperwork from people you don't want to borrow from, if you know what I mean. And Audrey. What's really happening with her practice? Tyler hesitated. It's not my secret to tell. She tried accessing our joint account after the meeting, Tyler. After everything that's happened, his shoulders slumped. Her practice has been struggling for years. She overspent on the office space equipment staff trying to create the image of success. Then the medical board started investigating some questionable billing practices. She's at risk of losing her license. The pieces clicked into place: Audrey's desperate need for cash, her panic about Parker's school payments, her rage at my public acknowledgement of her financial problems. Why keep up the pretense? I wondered aloud. Why not just ask for help? Honestly. You know, Audrey, Tyler said. Admitting failure isn't in her vocabulary, especially to you. To me. Why especially me? Because you succeeded by breaking the rules our parents' rules. You quit med school, rejected the path they laid out, and thrived anyway. That challenges everything Audrey built her identity around. I sat back, letting this sink in. And what about you? What's your excuse for taking advantage of me? I don't have one, he said simply. I was lazy and entitled. I told myself you could afford it, that you'd never notice that I deserved it somehow. I was wrong. His honesty was refreshing after years of manipulation and half-truths from my family. What are you going to do now? I asked. Get my own place. Build my training business legitimately. Stop looking for shortcuts. He paused. And I owe you an apology for Sunday dinner. I should have stood up for you. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Mom's number. I nearly declined the call, but something in Tyler's expression made me answer. Esther, Mom's voice was shaking. Your father's in the hospital. He collapsed at home. The doctors are saying it might be his heart. The next few hours passed in a blur. Tyler and I rushed to the hospital, meeting Mom in the waiting area outside the cardiac unit. Audrey arrived shortly after, still in her work clothes, her face drawn with worry. Dad had suffered a mild heart attack. He was stable but would need to stay for observation and possibly a cardiac catheterization. We gathered in his hospital room once he was settled. He looked small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily beside him. The sight punctured my anger, replacing it with complicated concern. The whole family's here, he said weakly, attempting a smile. Nothing like a health scare to bring everyone together. How are you feeling? I asked. Like an elephant sat on my chest. But they say I'll live. His eyes moved to each of us before settling on me. Might need to postpone our legal battle. There doesn't need to be a battle, Dad. He was quiet for a moment. I got the paperwork about the lake house sale yesterday. Went a little crazy, I guess. Started ranting about lawyers and justice. Then this happened. Mom took his hand. The doctor says stress was a contributing factor. Among other things, Audrey added, her doctor persona emerging. Your blood pressure's been uncontrolled for years, Dad. And your cholesterol medication compliance has been spotty at best. Always the doctor, he said with faint affection. A nurse entered to check his vitals, and we stepped into the hallway. Mom pulled me aside, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Something I should have told you years ago. We found an empty waiting area and sat side by side on vinyl chairs. I've enabled your father's worst tendencies our entire marriage, she began. His controlling behavior, his favoritism, his financial irresponsibility. I stood by when he dismissed your career choices, when he praised Audrey exclusively, when he let Tyler avoid responsibility. Mom, you don't have to. I do, she interrupted. When his business was failing, I knew about the gambling. I covered for him, made excuses. When he transferred his disappointment in himself to criticism of you, I said nothing. I failed you as a mother. Tears welled in her eyes. All those times you helped us financially, I knew it wasn't right. I knew we were taking advantage. But it was easier than confronting the truth about our situation. Why are you telling me this now? Because nearly losing him made me realize I can't keep living in denial. About anything. She straightened her shoulders. I've been planning to leave your father. The admission stunned me. Leave him after 40 years. I've stayed because it was comfortable, expected. But I've been saving a little money looking at apartments. I was going to talk to you about it, actually. Not for financial help, just advice. Woman to woman, not daughter to mother. The role reversal was jarring, but somehow appropriate. For the first time, Mom was speaking to me as an equal. Of course I'll help however I can. She squeezed my hand. I don't want his heart attack to change my plans, but I can't leave him while he's recovering either. Take the time you need. There's no rush. There's something else. She hesitated. Audrey isn't just having financial problems. She's being investigated for insurance fraud. Serious charges that could end her career. I suspected something like that. She's been desperate to maintain appearances. The perfect daughter, the successful doctor, the ideal mother. The pressure she put on herself and that we put on her, it was too much. I thought about Audrey's cutting remarks, her competitive behavior, her dismissal of my accomplishments. For the first time, I saw them as manifestations of insecurity rather than superiority. And Tyler's rental scheme. I found out recently. Your father doesn't know. She sighed. We created this, Esther. The entitlement, the secrets, the manipulation. You were the only one who built something honest. As we returned to Dad's room, I saw my family through new eyes, not as tormentors or antagonists, but as deeply flawed, struggling people who had created damaging patterns none of us knew how to break. Until now. Dad was asleep when we re-entered his room. Audrey stood by the window staring out at the city lights. Tyler sat scrolling through his phone, though his eyes weren't moving across the screen. We need to talk, I said quietly. All of us. But not here, not now. Audrey turned, her expression unreadable. About what? About everything. The secrets, the lies, the resentments. If Dad's health scare taught us anything, it's that life is too short for the games we've been playing. I don't play games, she said defensively. We all do, Audrey. Some of us are just more honest about it than others. For once, she didn't have a sharp retort. She merely nodded, a subtle acknowledgement that perhaps finally it was time for truth. Dad was released from the hospital 3 days later with strict orders to rest, take his medications, and reduce stress. The lake house sale closed the same day, an irony not lost on any of us. I used a portion of the proceeds to pay off my parents' remaining mortgage, a decision I made not from obligation but compassion. The family meeting I'd proposed was scheduled for the following Sunday. Not a dinner this time, but a deliberate conversation at a neutral location. I reserved a private room at a quiet restaurant downtown, a space that offered privacy without the emotional baggage of anyone's home. Tyler arrived first, punctuality being his new commitment. He'd found an apartment and would be moved out of my property within the week ahead of the required notice period. He'd also secured 3 new training clients, the beginning of what he hoped would be a legitimate business. I've been thinking about getting certified in sports nutrition, he told me as we waited for the others. Creating a more comprehensive training program. That's a great idea, I said sincerely. I know some business coaches who could help you develop a proper business plan if you're interested. I'd like that. But I want to pay for it myself. Mom and Dad came next. Dad moved slowly, the heart attack having taken both a physical and psychological toll. The brash confidence that had defined him was subdued, replaced by a quieter demeanor. Audrey arrived last without her husband. He's with Parker, she explained briefly, taking her seat. Once we were settled with drinks, an uncomfortable silence descended. We'd never had a family meeting like this, honest, intentional, without pretense. I called this meeting because we need to reset our relationships, I began. The patterns we've established aren't healthy for any of us. Dad shifted uncomfortably. This feels like an intervention. In a way, it is, I acknowledged. For all of us, myself included. I've enabled financial dependence while growing resentful about it. That's on me. And I've taken advantage of your generosity, Tyler admitted. I'm sorry, Esther. For everything. His straightforward apology seemed to startle the others. Audrey looked particularly uncomfortable, unused to direct emotional honesty. Mom reached for Dad's hand across the table. I've avoided difficult conversations for decades. I let problems fester rather than addressing them directly. Dad remained silent, his expression guarded. The heart attack scared all of us, I continued gently. It made me realize that despite everything I care what happens to this family. But caring doesn't mean maintaining destructive patterns. What does it mean then? Audrey asked, not unkindly. It means honesty. Support without enabling. Boundaries with love. Dad finally spoke, his voice rougher than usual. You sold the lake house. Yes, I did. It was mine to sell. I know, he admitted, surprising everyone. I knew it all along. I just didn't want to lose the last symbol of success from before my business failed. The lake house wasn't success, Dad. It was debt you couldn't afford. He nodded slowly. The business failure wasn't just bad luck or the economy. I made bad decisions. Took risks I shouldn't have. Borrowed from people I shouldn't have. Mom squeezed his hand supportively as he continued. I was so ashamed when it all collapsed. When you stepped in to save the lake house, it felt like another failure needing my daughter to rescue me. His voice cracked slightly. It was easier to resent you than thank you. Easier to focus on Audrey's conventional success than acknowledge yours, came from rejecting my advice. His admission hung in the air, decades of unspoken truth finally finding voice. The doctor says I need to avoid stress, he continued. The biggest stress in my life has been pretending. Pretending we're still the family we used to be. Pretending I'm still the provider. Pretending we don't all depend on you. Tears welled in his eyes, shocking us all. Dad never cried. I'm sorry, Esther. For Sunday dinner, and all the dinners before it. For not being proud of you openly. For making you feel like an outsider in your own family. The sincerity of his apology cracked something open in the room. Mom wiped tears from her cheeks. Tyler stared at the table, visibly moved. Even Audrey seemed affected, her usual armor temporarily lowered. I have things to apologize for too, Audrey said quietly. My practice is failing. I'm under investigation for billing irregularities. I might lose my license. Her voice shook with the effort of this confession. I was so determined to be perfect to fulfill the dream you had for me, Dad. When Esther succeeded on her own terms, I couldn't stand it. Every time she helped us financially, it felt like proof that I was failing despite doing everything right. She turned to me. I'm sorry for how I've treated you. For the comments, the dismissal, the competitiveness. And I'm especially sorry for trying to access our joint account after all this happened. It was desperate and wrong. Why did you need that money so urgently? I asked. Legal retainer, she admitted. The medical board investigation is escalating. My lawyer needed another $20,000 to continue representing me. Is there a defense? Were the billing issues mistakes or intentional? Mostly mistakes from inadequate oversight. I expanded too quickly, hired staff without proper training. But there were a few instances where I knowingly upcoded procedures when the practice was struggling. Those are harder to explain away. Her candor was unprecedented. The perfect daughter admitting serious mistakes, potentially criminal ones. What will you do if you lose your license? Mom asked gently. I don't know, Audrey confessed. My whole identity has been wrapped up in being Dr. Walker. Without that, I'm not sure who I am. You're still, Audrey, I said. You're still Parker's mother, still part of this family. A professional setback, even a serious one, doesn't change your core identity. She looked at me with genuine vulnerability. How did you do it? Walk away from med school when everyone expected you to follow through. Start over without feeling like a failure. I felt like a failure every day for years, I admitted. Every family dinner was an exercise in shame, watching everyone tiptoe around my dropout status while praising your medical career. I just knew staying on the wrong path would make me miserable forever, and that seemed worse than temporary disappointment. I think that's courage, Tyler offered unexpectedly. Knowing yourself well enough to change course. We ordered food, the conversation flowing more naturally now that the heaviest truths had been spoken. Mom shared her tentative plans for more independence, not leaving Dad immediately, but establishing clearer boundaries and personal space. Dad listened without defensiveness, perhaps understanding for the first time how his behavior had affected her. Tyler outlined his business plans, accepting feedback with newfound openness. Audrey discussed options beyond traditional medical practice, if the worst happened with the board investigation. As dessert arrived, I addressed the future directly. I want to establish new patterns for our family. I'm willing to help in true emergencies, but not as the default solution to every problem. I want relationships based on genuine connection, not financial dependence. That seems fair, Dad said quietly. More than fair, Mom added. What about Parker's school? Audrey asked hesitantly. I can't afford it without your help, especially now. Parker can finish the current year, I offered. That gives you time to explore other options or adjust your finances. Public schools in your district are excellent, Audrey. Or perhaps a different private school with better financial aid. She nodded thoughtfully. That's reasonable. Thank you. As we prepared to leave, Dad asked to speak with me privately. We stepped outside while the others settled the bill. The The money for the mortgage payoff, he said. I know it came from the lake house sale. It did. You didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. Not out of obligation, but because I care about your security, especially after the heart attack. He was quiet for a moment, looking older than his 62 years. I never asked about your development project downtown. The one you mentioned at Sunday dinner. The mixed-use building? We break ground next month. I'd like to hear more about it sometime. If you're willing to share. The simple expression of interest, so long withheld, meant more than he could know. I'd like that, Dad. As my family left the restaurant heading to their separate cars, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years around them: peace. Not perfect resolution, not complete transformation, but the beginning of something honest. Something real. The true wealth, I realized, wasn't in lake houses or business success or professional credentials. It was in relationships strong enough to withstand truth. 6 months later, I hosted Sunday dinner at my apartment for the first time. The family dynamic had shifted dramatically since our honest conversation and Dad's health scare. My living room looked different now, warmer, more personal. I'd finally invested in decorating my space rather than funding everyone else's. Large windows overlooked the city skyline, the evening light, casting everything in a golden glow. Tyler arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine and a homemade apple pie. His transformation had been the most visible. He'd not only moved into his own apartment, but had grown his training business to support himself completely. The nutrition certification was in progress, and he'd developed a specialized program for cardiac patients, inspired by Dad's recovery. The place looks great, he said, glancing around appreciatively. Those photos from your Argentina trip really tie the room together. Thanks. It's nice to finally have a space that feels like me. He set the pie on the counter. Made it myself. First attempt, so lower your expectations accordingly. I'm impressed regardless. 6 months ago, you couldn't make toast without burning it. He laughed. Amazing what you can learn when necessity forces you. Mom arrived next, looking younger somehow. She'd cut her hair into a stylish bob and replaced her usual subdued clothing with a vibrant blue dress. She and Dad were still together but living with new boundaries. She'd taken a part-time job at a local bookstore, fulfilling a lifelong love of literature, and had her own checking account for the first time in decades. The flowers are gorgeous, she said, admiring the centerpiece on my dining table. Your apartment feels so much more settled now. I finally took the time to make it a home, instead of just a place to sleep between workdays. She squeezed my hand. I'm glad. You deserve a beautiful space. Dad and Audrey arrived together, having shared a ride. Dad's recovery had been steady but had forced lifestyle changes, a heart-healthy diet, daily walks, stress management techniques. The heart attack had softened his more domineering tendencies, though glimpses of his old personality occasionally surfaced. Something smells amazing, he said, hanging his jacket in the entryway. Roast chicken with herbs, I replied. And Tyler brought pie. He baked. Audrey asked incredulously, setting down a bottle of sparkling water. Has the apocalypse begun? Her tone was teasing rather than cutting a distinction that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. Her own journey had been complicated. The medical board had placed her on probation for 2 years but allowed her to continue practicing under supervision. She'd downsized her office, restructured her practice to focus on medical dermatology rather than more lucrative cosmetic procedures, and implemented proper billing protocols. Parker attended public school now, an adjustment that had proven less traumatic than Audrey had feared. He's actually thriving, she'd told me last month. The diversity of students and teaching approaches seems to suit him better. We gathered around my dining table, the conversation flowing easily as we passed dishes family style. The dynamic wasn't perfect. Old habits occasionally resurfaced, requiring gentle course corrections, but the atmosphere was unrecognizable from those tense Sunday dinners of the past. I have some news, I announced as we finished the main course. The downtown development received its final approval yesterday. Construction starts next week. Congratulations, Mom said warmly. That's the mixed-use building, right? The fact that she remembered the project details without prompting illustrated how much had changed. Yes. 30 retail units on the ground floor, 60 office spaces on the next 5 floors, and 40 luxury apartments on the top 7. Sounds impressive, Dad said, his interest genuine. How long until completion? 18 months if everything goes according to schedule, which it never does. Probably closer to 2 years, realistically. You should give us a tour of the site sometime, Tyler suggested. I'd love to see the process. I'd like that, I agreed. Audrey set down her water glass. I have news too. I've been accepted into a healthcare administration program. Part-time evenings. I can continue my practice while studying. That's wonderful, Mom said. Is this a change of direction? More like an expansion of options. If I decide to step back from clinical work eventually, this opens other pathways in healthcare. Smart move, I commented. Diversifying your skills. She nodded, the defensiveness that would have once accompanied any career discussion noticeably absent. I realized during the investigation that having my entire identity wrapped up in being a practicing physician left me vulnerable. This gives me more flexibility. Dad cleared his throat. Since we're sharing news, your mother and I have decided to sell the house. This announcement was unexpected. Really? Where will you go? We're looking at condos downtown, Mom explained. Something smaller, more manageable. One level better for your father's heart health. And the yard work has become too much. The real estate market is strong, Dad added. It's a good time to downsize. What went unspoken but understood was how this decision represented a significant shift in their self-image. The large suburban home had been a status symbol, part of the appearance of success they'd struggled to maintain. Choosing a simpler lifestyle, aligned with their actual needs, rather than their desired image, marked real growth. As Tyler served his surprisingly excellent apple pie, Audrey addressed me directly. I never properly thanked you, Esther. For what? For the wake-up call. If you hadn't stood your ground after that Sunday dinner, I'd still be drowning in debt, facing worse legal consequences, and living a life built on appearances rather than reality. We all needed that wake-up call, Mom added softly. Dad nodded in agreement, a gesture that would have been unthinkable before his heart attack. I didn't do it to teach anyone a lesson, I clarified. I did it because I finally recognized my own worth. And in doing so helped us recognize ours, Tyler said. Real worth, not the kind measured in possessions or status. Later, as we moved to the living room with coffee, Dad maneuvered to sit beside me on the sofa. He still moved, carefully conscious of his health. I've been meaning to ask you something, he said quietly. That consultation you offered Tyler for his business plan, do you think someone my age could benefit from something similar? You're thinking of starting a business. Not exactly. More like consulting. Using my construction experience without the stress of running a company. Just a few clients' projects I can believe in. The humility of his question, the openness to learning from me, these represented the most profound changes of all. I think that's an excellent idea, I said sincerely. And yes, I'd be happy to connect you with some business coaches. As the evening wound down, I found myself standing by the window watching the city lights while my family gathered their things. Audrey approached, stopping beside me to take in the view. Beautiful perspective from up here, she commented. It is, I agreed. I never really appreciated it before. She turned to face me. Do you remember what you said at that Sunday dinner, after I made that awful comment? I didn't say anything. That was the problem. Exactly. She nodded thoughtfully. You took a bite and said nothing. But you were making a decision in that moment, weren't you? I was, I admitted. I decided I was done being the family ATM without being a true family member. That silence changed everything for us. She hesitated, then added, Thank you for not giving up on us entirely. As they left, each family member hugged me genuinely, not the perfunctory embraces of the past, but real connections. When the apartment was empty, I returned to the window, reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The lake house was gone, sold to developers who would likely tear it down and build something new. The family financial entanglements had been unwound. The old patterns of enabling and resentment had been replaced by healthier interactions. None of it had been easy. There had been setbacks, days when Dad reverted to old behaviors, moments when Audrey's competitive streak flared, times when Tyler needed reminders about responsibility. But the trajectory was unmistakably positive. My phone buzzed with a message from my real estate partner. Congratulations on the final approval. This project will put us on the map. I smiled, thinking about how much had changed since that Sunday dinner. I had finally found my place not just in business, but in my family. Not as the outsider, not as the reluctant benefactor, but as Esther, valued for who I was, not what I could provide. The most valuable asset in my portfolio wasn't the downtown development or any property I owned. It was the self-respect that had allowed me to stand firm when it mattered most. The boundaries that had ultimately strengthened, rather than severed, my family connections. The courage to demand the place I deserved at the table. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in what you say, but in what you refuse to accept. In taking a bite and saying nothing while deciding everything. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? I'd love to hear how you navigated that challenging situation. Comment below with your experience. And don't forget to like this video if you found Esther's journey meaningful. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about finding strength through difficult family dynamics, and share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for others and yourself is to establish healthy boundaries.